But first, we'll have Celeste come up and talk to us about using art and song.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Got to get my notes. Old school, written down by hand. I used to actually co-chair a 501c3 Liberty on the Rocks in California, so that's kind of cool. Okay, so I got some notes. I'm going to read a little bit, and then I'll do a little bit of, not exactly lecturing, but okay. So many people, they dismiss art or stories as fiction as unimportant or something beneath their notice. But this is a mistake, because the way in which you can truly influence people is through art. Songs, poems, but mostly stories. Fiction, whether it be the written word or novel, moving pictures, is the way to truly reach people. Now the left knows this, and while you've been asleep at the wheel, the master propagandists have been going to work on your children. Nothing can exist in a vacuum, not even, and in fact, in particular ideas. This means that if you remove water from a container in the ocean, more water will immediately rush in to take its place. Or, to put it another way, if say some cities, then counties, and then states ban SUVs or plastic bags, and the counties and cities and states in another area do nothing, as in, well, you don't really oppose plastic bags or oppose sports utility vehicles, but we aren't pro-plastic or pro-SUVs. Or, well, we won't mandate light rail in our county, but we have no opinion on a county that does take federal money and mandate city planning. Then eventually these neutral counties will become anti-plastic, anti-cars, anti-tobacco, anti-single-family dwelling, etc., etc. Nothing can exist in a vacuum. If somebody comes at your friends or your neighbors, your community, your child with bad ideas, this can only be fought with another idea, preferably a good one. An idea must be fought with an idea. In a contest of a bad idea versus no idea, the bad idea wins every single time. But there's more to it than that. In order to get your philosophy out to counter Marx's philosophy or progressive philosophy or green philosophy or whatever label the statists are using this week, you must use art, and in particular, you must use stories to do it. The far left are a minority in this country, but they have been able to influence and fool millions of innocent people by using Hollywood to romanticize their vision. And make no mistake about it, although you may not agree with the message in many of these movies, they are brilliant films, perfectly executed. They're beautifully scored, wonderfully cast, expertly lit and shot, and have excellent screenplays. Many of the awards given these movies are well-deserved in that, in the literal sense, they are brilliant works of art. And these brilliant works of art are telling your children and neighbors and friends that they are evil just for being born beneath animals. They're beneath trees. They're beneath people of color if they're white. They're beneath homosexuals if they are straight. Or they are would-be rapists or oppressors if they are male. Naturally, they are beneath noble, unselfish, third-world citizens if they are non-green, non-sustainable lifestyle, selfish American citizens. Why does this work? Because nonfiction books or documentaries or lectures such as this one stimulate the intellect, whereas stories engage the emotions. Music can do this too, and in fact, music can circumvent the intellect completely and go right for the emotional center of the brain. And in this way, you can disarm your listener by getting him to lower the walls he would normally slam down on you had you merely attempted to state your ideology. This isn't to say that you cannot convey ideas effectively with a format such as this. You most certainly can. But in order to succeed at this, you must first get your audience to sit at the table. Whereas with effective, i.e. subtle propaganda in films and stories, music, your audience member won't even notice he is absorbing new ideas. He won't even realize he's sitting at the table. One can, of course, do this in a benevolent way. I mean, you can use stories and movies and music to promote American ideas, inspiring things, the hero that succeeds, good word ethics and whatnot. But you have to watch out because this is actually done all the time by the leftists, and they do use stories. So you must grasp the important principle of using compelling stories. And when I was younger, the 80s and 90s, there was a movie made called The Never-Ending Story, which is translated from a German novel. And in this movie, there's a little boy, and he follows the adventures of another person, a hero, who goes and fights this terrible nothing that's destroying their land. And it's this nothing, and it grows and grows, and there's no way for people to fight it, and they're losing their dreams and their hopes. At the end of this long journey, he's lost many of his friends, and his horses died. So he gets to the ivory tower, and the wise woman tells him the whole time that the person he needed to save them was actually with him. And so he says, now we'll get that person to save us. So he gets very angry here, and he says, look, all my friends died. I've gone through all these awful things. Our world is gone. My horse died. Why didn't you just let me tell him in the first place? How could you be so cruel? And she says to him, well, we needed him to invest. He wouldn't have wanted to save us if he didn't get to know us and follow us on these stories. And while he was following your adventures, other people were following his adventures. So, and then you can look at, say, the Bible. The Bible isn't just a bunch of edicts telling you what to do. It's basically a book of stories. It gets you to invest and follow characters and to relate to them and connect with them. I got a Marco Rubio moment. Hold on. It is now. So we'll take something like this. This is really pretty. Sorry, it's morning and I'm always an alto. In the springtime we kill the Jews in ovens with poison gas. My money grubbing race, and we'll take what they have. We've been gambling all our lives to bring them every night. Sorry, it's morning. It's a long battle worth the fight for every Jew must die. See, and that's very pretty. Although it'd be prettier if my voice wasn't thrashed. So whatever was listening to me sing and you're kind of tapping your foot to was, in the springtime we kill the Jews in ovens with poison gas. They a money-grubbing race, we'll take what they have. We've been gambling Aryan lives, it's a long battle worth the fight. It is worth the fight, for every Jew must die. Now that's an extreme example, but there's studies that show that most people, 70%, don't really hear lyrics consciously when they're listening to music. And you'd be surprised years later at how many people, when they realize what's in a song, won't reject it because by then it's sunk in. So that's an extreme example, but look at a song like Imagine. You know, lots of Christians love that song. You know, there's words in there like, imagine those, religion's bad and there's no heaven and there's just here and there's just now. If you're a Christian, you obviously don't believe that, but millions of Christians sing that song and they love it. Or let's say you're Poland hoping Germany doesn't invade you. You know, imagine there's no borders, there's no countries. Well, I want to be in a separate country if Hitler's coming to invade me. So when you believe in things like that and sovereign nations and all that, and that yet you're singing a song like that that goes against your ideas, it goes to show how they can circumvent, you know, your reasoning center and go right for the emotions. So we take a nice movie. There's a lot of nice movies when we were growing up, like The Goonies is a nice movie. From my generation, these kids, it's a Steven Spielberg movie, they go on a nice treasure hunt and they're trying to save their housing development from the evil capitalists who come along and they want to take it from their nice dad who's just a school teacher, a history professor, and of course he doesn't make any money. So they go on this adventure and it's a really sweet movie and they get the treasure. But of course, what the movie's saying underneath is you can't really get anything on your own. You have to go get this treasure, which some pirates who literally murdered people to obtain it got in the first place. And in the end, you're kind of led to believe while you're watching the movie, well, they didn't want to sell the houses to these mean people. I guess the government was using eminent domain, right? But then the dad comes up with the money from the jewels the kids find in the treasure, and then he gives it to the bad guys and says, ha, it's ours, we're going to keep it. So then what you're led to believe is, I guess it just meant the father didn't have the money. But I mean, if someone doesn't have the money and they're just renting a house, there's nothing evil about someone else buying property. People do it all the time. But if you watch the movie, you're going to side with the people who just didn't know how to make money, and they had to go find this treasure. And you know, and literally it shows the son of the adversary in the movie reading things like guns and ammo, and he's at the country club. Because, of course, people who like the Second Amendment are always these evil people and whatnot. Or you take a movie like Eddie Murphy in Coming to America. So he's this prince, and he's got this heart of gold, and he goes undercover and comes to America to find his perfect lady, you know, to be his princess. And he wants someone to love him for himself. So he doesn't tell anybody who he is, and he finds this wonderful lady, and they fall in love. But all throughout the story, the girl's father is this kind of schmucky guy, and he owns this chain of restaurants that competes with McDonald's. It's got a similar name, and you're supposed to be snickering at him the whole time because he's this dumpy guy making money, and he's shady, and he's plagiarizing McDonald's thing, and you're kind of laughing at him, and there's all this, you know, innuendo going on, like times when the audience and Eddie Murphy are laughing at the father. He says, Akeem, you know, to the prince, not knowing he's a prince, maybe one day you could have a home like this, and if you work really hard, and you'll get somewhere. And he goes, yes, sir, and you're supposed to laugh like, oh, he's being so nice to this schmuck. Little does this guy know he's a prince, right? And the guy is a good guy. You know, you kind of are on Eddie Murphy's side, but underneath that, it's like he's a prince, you know, he didn't earn his wealth. And so basically the movie leads you to the idea that you're a nice person if you're this prince and you want to go make a girl a princess. But if you're in America making your money in this kind of schmucky way, you know, that's something to laugh at. And these are actually nice movies, you know, where it's kind of really deep in there, but those are the ones where they can get you. Whereas they come right out and say something like the devil doesn't say to Eve, hey, let's piss off God and screw him over and just go do what we want and get kicked out of Eden forever, man. Let's talk about, you know, how we want to take this fruit and you know you want it, right? Let's talk about how you should just make a mess of the whole thing. I mean, obviously anybody in the right mind would go, no, psycho, I'm not going to do that, right? No, he doesn't do that. He suggests and he implies, right? So that's how it's done, is it's done through suggestion. And what happens is, while this stuff is going on, there's no one on our side countering it. So first it starts in these sweet movies in the 80s and the 90s, then they start to get more bold. And of course in my generation we had Fern Gully. Fern Gully is the woods and the nice fairies or the Ewoks or the native persons or whatever they're supposed to be. And the evil Westerners come along and cut down the trees so they could build their houses, and of course that's mean. And then you have Lord of the Rings, maybe 10 years after that. Of course, it's better to live back in the day when we didn't have cars and there was no technology, and that's the way you should really live. And then eventually you get to Avatar, you know, which this James Cameron movie, and that just, they don't even pretend. The bad guys in the movie are literally the United States Marines. They're baby killers. The nice people minding their own business who are supposed to be, say, the Iranians or the Iraqis or the Afghanis are these nice kind of Ewoks, and the mean, you know, Marines come in and beat them up and take their minerals, right? And the hero who realizes, I'm not an evil Westerner, I'm going to go live with the natives. The only way he can communicate with the girl in this movie is by using the evil technology to drive a spaceship there, meet her. The place is so foreign to his, you know, biology that he has to literally wear this amazing technological suit, an avatar, if you will, to protect him from the environment and fall in love with her. So, sure, you know, things like that. It's great to live in the woods and not have any technology if you have magic. You know, same in, it's like, right? And people can look at me, and I don't know why we're supposed to agree with the left. You're a woman, Celeste. You should side with the left. The left cares about women's values. Really? Because in the 21st century, with our ugly cars and our smog and all this, some guy comes at me, I can protect myself with my 357 with a 38 special, right? But if we go back to medieval times, have you ever tried lifting a hand-and-a-half sword when you're like under 5'4"? I don't think so. You know, then I really am at the mercy of Robin Hood. I hope he can save me, or whomever. And then you hear people complain, there's no girls in these Lord of the Rings kind of stories. Well, of course not, you idiot, because women can't do anything back then, because nobody can use their mind. You're at the mercy of brute strength. But now men and women can, you know, be equals, and we can all have our minds do things for us because we have this technology, right? So anyway, that's just one of the many ways that do that, and they fool us. So, you know, it can seem overwhelming. So everybody listens to me say these things, and they're like, well, Celeste, what am I supposed to do? I'm not a filmmaker. You want me to go out and make a bunch of movies? I mean, this is overwhelming. I don't know, how are we supposed to counter this, right? And it's like, well, there's a lot of ways you can do it. I mean, I'm not a filmmaker either. You can support people that are making things like that. You can look for them. They are there. I'm going to pass out at the end of this. I have some synopsis and some movies we found that are amazing movies. Some you may have heard of, and probably a lot you haven't heard of. And they do promote our values. And then there's people like Dinesh D'Souza, there's people up and coming. Just go online and look. And when you see something, look at Kickstart. When someone's trying to make something, you can donate to that and you can help. And we can combat them, and we are getting there. So, you know, it can be done. It's not too late. But you have to be on the lookout because they're there, and this is how they come, and they do get you. So, yeah, I'm going to pass these out. And then this is just to remind you how it's everywhere. This is a book. Marco Rubio moment. This is a book that I just picked up at a VA hospital, right? I picked it up while I was visiting my friend. It's a good little murder mystery. And in this murder mystery, there's this guy, and it says in here, he looked at the photos on his desk. there was a picture of him with Rush Limbaugh. His screensaver had a picture of him with Newt Gingrich. His friend who was going to run for president had a picture of him and Ronald Reagan laughing irreverently at one of these things that only they would understand. Now, the person that's saying this about is literally this evil guy in this book. He literally has murdered people. His friends have murdered people. They're these psychos who are using the government to experiment on people. It literally says in this book that the guy's favorite politician was Goldwater. This is just a random book that isn't even supposed to be propaganda. It's not nonfiction. It's just a book. So it's everywhere. It's there. So you have to be on the lookout for it. And the other thing is that the thing about reaching people, you don't have to necessarily talk to them, but you could maybe suggest a movie, or that's why talk radio is good, and that's why the left is trying to get rid of it with like the fairness doctrine and all that. Is if you've ever been wrong about something in your life, right, and you're kind of called on it, and it was something you didn't know or knowledge you didn't have, it can be kind of embarrassing, right? And sometimes if you're faced with someone and they're telling you that, you can, even if they're not gloating, you can feel like they are, right? It's embarrassing. So sometimes instead of one-on-one, oh, I know this and you're wrong and here's why global warming is stupid and so are you. Instead, you could, suggest a movie, right? Or you can, suggest a book, and then they can kind of do it on their own and they'll kind of get into it, and that's how it can be done. And the same with yourselves. It can be really exhausting being out here, so you can watch movies and sort of recharge your batteries. And sometimes it's more like you need to cement why you believe what you believe. We've all seen these rhinos that go up there, try to defend our position, and they fall apart, and it's embarrassing. It's because they don't really know what they believe, right? And they look like silly compared to the Democrats because they do know what they believe. So sometimes it's just about recharging your batteries, your own moral center, getting re-inspired. So just watch good movies, find good stuff, and sometimes it's as simple as that, knowing why you believe what you believe, re-inspiring yourself, and then going out one-on-one, and we can do it. So that's it. Thanks.